Vetals explains the immune system. Viruses and bacteria and other nasties are always trying to get into animals' bodies and use all of their internal goodies for themselves. And if this were to happen, well, they would die. To prevent death, all animals, including us, have an internal army. Now this is a very complex army with hundreds of soldiers, lieutenants, captains, and other army guys that all work in a slightly different way to ensure the enemy is vanquished. Now to explain all this would get very complicated, so I'm going to focus on the basics. First on site when the barriers of the body have been breached is generally the macrophages. Macrophages gobble up the baddies and also radio for reinforcements. They're like your own tiny bodyguards. Enter the neutrophil, an unassuming character with massive killing power. You can think of this guy as the attacker. Between these two, the infection may be under control, but without help, they'll eventually be overwhelmed. This is where the dendritic cell comes in. The dendritic cell goes and investigates the source of infection and collects tiny samples from the bacterial virus to take up to the big guys. Once the dendritic cell has its information, it goes and meets with the T cells. Now the T cells are really important. The dendritic cell introduces them to an enemy and prepares them for war. The T cells start replicating quickly. Some of the T cells act as foot soldiers and go straight to the battlefield. Others stay behind and become memory cells. This means they can react even more quickly when there's a foreign invader in the future, and these are the guys that make your dog or cat immune to disease after vaccinations. A few T cells also go off to recruit some very specialised soldiers. Meet the B cell. The T cells and B cells get along well, especially when they are fighting a common enemy. Once the T cell gives the B cell the lowdown on the enemy, the B cell starts replicating and producing a tiny army of antibodies. Antibodies flock to the site of infection and attach to the outer wall of the enemy, making them easier to kill. With all of these cells working together, the infection is eventually eradicated. Now your immune cells can have a big party, before dying shortly after, because your immune system has checks in place to stop the war once the enemy's gone. Thank you for watching VetTales Explains the Immune System. If you would like to learn even more about how the immune system works, check out the great videos by Crash Course. If you have any suggestions or want to hear an explanation, just mention it in the comments below.